Good morning. It's 9:05, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Building and Operating Committee of Thursday, March 27th, 2025. Before we begin, please note this meeting is being recorded. Welcome to everyone joining us here in person, as well as those listening on the phone. If you would like to provide public comments at today's meeting, and you have not done so already, please let Thomas know in the back of the room or Justine know on the call-in line what items you'd like to speak on today. Madam Secretary, please begin by calling the roll.
Good morning. Directors Giudice.
Here.
Mastin.
Here.
Parr. Absent. Rabbit. Absent. Vice Chair Rodoni.
Present.
Chair Garbarino. Absent. And President Cochran.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum, and also here is Directors Fernandez, Hill, and Snyder.
Thank you. Please follow along by referring to the page numbers located on the bottom right-hand corner of your meeting packet. We'll begin this morning with agenda item 3, which is to approve action related to award of a contract number 2024-BT-029, the Novato Bus Facility Dispatch and Fuel Island Building Roof Rehabilitation and Building Exterior Improvements to ProX Construction, Inc. The staff report begins on page 3, and John, our district engineer, will be here to present the report. John, please begin your report.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. County and members of the committee. So the item before you this morning recommends to the Board of Directors to approve the following actions relative to contract number 2024-BT-029, Novato Bus Facility Dispatch and Fuel Island Building Roof Rehabilitation and Building Exterior Improvements as follows. Approve award contract number 2024-BT-029 ProX Construction Incorporated for Rancho Cordova, California, the amount of $331,750. Establish a construction contingency for contract number 2024-BT-29, the amount of $49,762, which is equal to 15% of the contract award amount. And authorize an increase the amount of $119,512 in the fiscal year 24-25 Bus Division capital budget for project number 2435, B2 Dispatch and Fuel Island Building Roof Rehabilitation, be funded with district reserves for a revised total project budget $710,512. So this is these are two buildings at the B2 or Novato Bus Facility. The buildings were built in the 1970s. The project was put on the project list last fiscal year because we knew we had some problems with the roof and it was leaking and we knew it had to be rehabilitated. So part of our state of good repair, we included this in the project budget. The work does entail, like it's mentioned, roofing, also replacing windows, skylights, and then painting the exterior of the building. And at the same time, the facility does not have an emergency generator, but we thought about, since we had some power outages and whatnot, it would be prudent to include a shut-off switch, manual switch. So in case there ever was power failure, we could bring a temporary generator and hook it up at that switch location. So that's the scope of work. So this was District Engineering Department put together a bid package for this to include that scope of work. On January 16th, we solicited on our bridge portal bonfire. We also had a pre-construction meeting, and we made solicitations to over 1,700 email addresses. At the time of the bid opening on February 20th, we received 3 bids. You can see here the number 1 and number 2 bidders were very close to each other, and the third bidder was not far behind. Staff the DBE program office and the attorney evaluated the bids, determined their completeness and conformance with the bid criteria. Two of the bids were considered to be responsive. One of them was not, due to not complying with the criteria for self-performing at least 30% of the work. So they were considered to be not responsive. But the low bid was considered to be responsive. It was approximately 1% of the engineer's estimate. In addition, there was a small business enterprise goal of 8.5%. The prime contractor themselves are an SBE entity, and at this time it's anticipated a 97.5% SBE participation for the contract. So engineering staff and the district attorney determined that Pro X Construction Incorporated, with the bid price of $331,750, is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and recommends award of the contract to Pro X Construction. Staff also recommends the construction contingency in the amount of $49,762 be established, because whenever you do improvements on old structures, you run into unforeseen things, and so it's prudent to have a contingency. And lastly, staff performed an analysis of the level of effort needed to continue with the contract administration and recommends that budget adjustment for staff be increased by $105,500. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Looking for any director questions or comments? Director Hernandez.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Thank you for your report. I had a couple of questions. One, which you already answered. I was going to ask you on what basis the Caliber contracting bid was ruled out of order. So thank you for answering that. You mentioned something about 1,700 email addresses. I'm sorry, I missed what that was connected to.
So that's just soliciting, trying to ensure that we get people to be interested and bid on a project. So if you
That's
look at
the bonfire portal. Is that so? 1,700 addresses, 1,700 contacts were made relative to this project through the bonfire system.
that's correct.
Okay. So given that, I was going to say, yeah, we got three bidders, but that's a huge ratio, 1,700 to 3. I'm wondering why we're still not getting a good number of bidders to choose from. I know that's not under your control. It's just a concern of mine that we don't have more competition. And one of the 3 was tossed. Let's see.
Yeah, I do want to clarify that the 1,700, that includes when we do our small business enterprise goal, we do an analysis through Artemis in her office of how many potential small contractors are out there in not just the Bay Area, all the way up through Sacramento. And so there are, if you go to the list, there's thousands and thousands of contractors on that list. So we have that list in our database. We sent out notices to them. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're able to particularly, put a bid on this project. And many of them are subcontractors and not primes.
Okay.
I felt that we were fortunate to get 3 bidders after the last couple of projects we've had.
Right.
We only received 1 bid.
Right. Good. Well, I was happy to see that there was such a high percentage of SBE performance, 97.5. So I think that's probably one of the higher percentages that I've seen in a bid coming through in a very long time. So, all right. Thank you very much. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions or comments on this item? Right. I'm going to conclude the discussion on item 3 then, and we're looking to take a vote. Is there? That was my next. Yeah. So, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
We don't have anyone in the room. Justine, is there anyone on the line?
Hi, good morning. No, we have no speakers this morning on this item. Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. So I'm looking to get a motion on item number 3.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Let the record show there's no opposition and the motion passes. I'm going to suggest that we skip item 4 and move to number 5. John, if you want to stay there, to give time for our directors of our representatives on the SMART board to show up, perhaps, so we can get that report.
Train was delayed.
Yeah.
And we'll-
We're in for that.
I do believe it was a traffic issue this morning.
This is a recorded meeting.
Great. So now I'm going to turn it over to district engineer to update us on his engineer projects.
Again, thank you. My written report is before you. There's a few projects I'd like to bring your attention to. First, the suicide deterrent project. The contractor is continuing with the removal of the existing travelers that are still in span 1 and span 4, the suspension bridge. And they're also progressing with the final sewing of the net at the north side span on the east side of the suspension bridge. All of the nets installed at that location, but the final sewing is ongoing. Also at the San Rafael Bus Employee Parking Lot, I'd like to report that all of the solar panel arrays have been installed in the parking lot, and the contractor now is doing the wiring between all the different panels and bringing runs over to where the main panel board, switchboard is going to be located. I'd also like to report that the underwater inspection services that was awarded, they completed the side sonar scanning of both the south tower and the north tower, and they're processing that data currently to look at the bathymetry and any maybe defects, if any, that they could find on the piers. And then lastly, at the San Francisco Ferry Terminal, the contractor successfully removed the east outer berth this week, and that berth has now been transported over to an offsite facility where they'll be performing those repairs. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Directors, any questions or comments? Yes, Director Hernandez. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, John. At the last board meeting, we had a discussion about the electrical issue related to the transformers. I'm wondering how that is progressing. Are we still on schedule with the equipment that we requested and ordered? And how is the temporary system holding up?
Yes. So, as you mentioned, we had a February, I believe it was around the 8th, on a weekend where we had a power outage, and the assessment was performed and some of the equipment failed on the bridge itself. We had a contractor come out and with our district forces and also with our electrical engineer did the assessment of what caused that. Primarily, it was some of the facility infrastructure has been out there since the bridge was actually installed. So the assessment has been performed on the whole east sidewalk. The equipment so we're doing a 2-phase approach. Currently, we have temporary generators that we want to remove. Equipment has been the order has been put in for that equipment to remove the temporary generators and go back on PG&E power. It's about a couple week duration is what we were informed to get that equipment. Again, this is temporary equipment. It's not the stainless steel enclosures equipment that will last for another 50 years, but it will at least get us off of the temporary. So that has been ordered, and then the assessment of what needs to be finally done for the full-time or the final improvements. Our electrical engineering consultant is working on the drawings currently, and we plan to put out a construction bid for that work.
How long do you think it will be before we get the full assessments from all of the folks researching what happened here?
We have the full assessment done. It's now just a matter of putting together a package specifying what the equipment replacement needs to be. New equipment doesn't fit at the existing locations where the existing transformers are located, so we have to make some modifications so that we could actually place the new equipment at those locations. So that's the part that we're working on.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm confused.
We'll also have to replace the cable in the east sidewalk itself, which is going to require either nighttime closures and or closure during the day, which will impact the public. So we're trying to come up with a schedule to minimize that impact to the public.
So rather significant. I appreciate the updates. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Other director questions or comments? John, I was wondering if you could comment. There's been a lot of publicity about certain bridges that weren't meeting requirements for inspections, federal inspections. I know we were named at one point, so just comment on that.
I'll jump in first, if I may. I talked about this in Washington, D.C. So yesterday, he could give a speech if you heard it so many times. A year ago, we celebrated the sad and tragic collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore Harbor. The Francis Scott Key Bridge was built in the 1970s. It had some ship collision protection, things called dolphins, little small islands in front of it. But a cargo vessel that was about 1,000 feet long lost power. That cargo vessel had a single engine. It wasn't multiple engines, no redundant systems. It had an electrical failure with some equipment, and it lost power and it slammed into the bridge and resulted in the tragic loss, and not just of the bridge, but of workers, men and women of labor who are out there working at night. The National Transportation Safety Board did an evaluation of that. They typically do evaluations of accidents on any transportation mode in the country. We're most familiar with hearing about airplane accidents. They had reached out to us just for contact information. I spoke with someone. He wanted my contact information, our chief engineer's contact information, and our board president's contact information. They did not ask any other questions about where we are on things. So when the report came out, we were not aware it was going to come out until Paolo received a call from a reporter saying, hey, this report's coming out later today, and it's going to name you. Setting all that aside, the report that came out is helpful, but it is incomplete. The report talks about protecting America's bridges, and it lists 30 bridge owners, including us, that have bridges that were built pre-1996 that have not yet done an evaluation per a standard that was developed in the 90s. For the record, no bridge built in America pre-1996 has completed this study. So that's just an important fact to be aware of. But the report is incomplete in a couple of areas. It was interesting because we met with members of Congress, so I was able to give them an example in their district where it left the bridge out. The most challenging bridge in the Bay Area for a bar pilot to navigate is the railroad bridge, the Benicia-Martinez Bridge. They listed on page 22 of the report, table B1, the third bridge listed is the 1962 Benicia-Martinez Bridge. Well, immediately adjacent to it, you can spit on the railroad bridge, is a bridge that was built 30 years earlier, 1930, with a much narrower opening. The likelihood of having a ship collision is a function of how wide your navigation envelope is. So they left out all railroad bridges. We pointed that out. They also left out the Ambassador Bridge that connects Canada to Detroit. So it was not a complete report in that facet. Going beyond that, the report made the assumption that, well, all those pre-1996 bridges should go and use this new AASHTO, new in 1990s, evaluation method. Well, bridges that were built after 1996 did that because it's the design standard. That having been said, if you built a bridge in 2000 and you had done the evaluation, in 2016, the Panama Canal was modified and got bigger and deeper. So maritime seagoing vessels can be much, much bigger today, and they're much, much more frequent. So the bridges that were built post-1996 should not be assumed to be okay. They did an evaluation before they built the bridge of what they thought was in effect. And arguably, any boat bridge that has seagoing vessels should probably do this evaluation, and then every 10 years relook at it. So the other area where it was deficient is on page 10 of the report. It says federal highways really can't do anything about this. And that is a factually incorrect statement. The Federal Highway Administration requires all bridge owners of highway bridges, roads, non-railroad bridges, to participate in the National Bridge Inspection Standards System, NBIS. And every few years they change the NBIS. After the bridge collapse in Minnesota, they realized that, well, if you have a house of cards, you pull a card out, it doesn't collapse, that's good. But the ones that you pull out that it collapses, those are called fracture critical. So if you're going to pull a card out and collapses, well, the same concept in a bridge. If you pull a piece out and it collapses, that's fracture critical. After that bridge collapse, they modified the NBIS to say you should be arm's length when you look at that. You shouldn't be on the ground with binoculars. After some bridges collapsed from scour, where the water washes away the ground beneath the pilings, they're exposed and it collapses, they now require you to do scour evaluations. They require you to do an analysis every 2 years of how much traffic your bridge can handle. And they say, well, have you changed the dead load on your bridge? Dead load is the weight of stuff. We added a movable medium barrier. They want to make sure you did calculations. So they should arguably require bridge owners who have ocean-going travel underneath them, ocean-going vessels, every 10 years to look at it to say has it changed. So when we were back in D.C., we met with Federal Highway Bridge Program folks. We talked about that. They cannot advocate for regulation, particularly in today's environment. So we met with the offices of the three House Transportation Infrastructure members. We met with Congressman DeSaulnier, Congressman Huffman, and we shared with them that as part of the reauthorization, since federal highways can't ask for it, they should, in their, recommend that FHWA review and make modifications to their NBIS to have bridge owners reevaluate their bridge every 10 years if they have ocean-going vessels transiting underneath it. So, now that's just background on the report where it was helpful because it highlights an issue. It named 30 bridge owners that had a list of bridges. 4 bridges that started the evaluation were not included on there. There's a footnote about the west span of the Bay Bridge. Arguably, the most vulnerable bridge is the west span of the Bay Bridge because we have a 4,200-foot opening. The width of our navigation opening is 6 times wider than the bridge in Baltimore that collapsed. So the likelihood of being hit is much less. The west span of the Bay Bridge, it's about a 1,200-foot opening. So it's almost 4 times smaller than our opening. And that has all the ships going to the Port of Oakland. That ship collision protection they have is rubber on the pile cap. And the rubber protects a small boat that hits it from being damaged. By comparison, we're very fortunate that those that went before us did what they did. We have a really, really wide opening. Our north tower sits half on land and half on water. So a large commercial, ocean-going vessel will run aground before it could ever strike our north tower. Our south tower sits 1,100 feet offshore in very deep water. And in the 1930s, when they built the bridge, they constructed a fender ring around it. They pumped the water out, mined the rock, and built the pedestal of the tower up in the dry. Then they opened it back up. So when we posted on our website our statement in response to this, we included a link to the artist rendering that you see on the wall that shows you what our protection is. At the top, at the level of the water, the concrete is 10 feet thick. At a depth of 40 feet, it is 27 feet thick. What's not shown there is that concrete fender ring is about half filled with sand. So it's kind of like a giant three-way crash barrel. That having been said, it doesn't mean it's adequate. And so you took an action prior to this NTSB report coming out based on Mr. Everly's recommendation that we hire a consultant to, among other things, do an evaluation for this AASHTO level 2 or method 2 evaluation to see what it is. And part of that's looking at what the vessel traffic is. You should also know for the last almost a year now, John Staff's, Dr. Steve Song, has been participating in meetings with Federal Highways and Caltrans looking at this issue. A lot of the focus is on the Bay Bridge West spans. At those meetings, the bar pilots have said, well, don't forget about that railroad bridge in Carquinez or Benicia. But anyway, we're participating in all that. And our consultant will take advantage of the list of vessels that went last year and how big they are, how fast they go and all that as they do the evaluation. Your staff has been participating in a regional discussion about this topic. So hopefully that's responsive to the question that was posed.
Very much so. Thank you. John, did you want to add anything?
Would like to report that, yes, you all took an action in February, and that scope was included in the RFQ that went out last year, not anticipating that the Transportation Board report would recommend this, but we were just thinking ahead that this would be something prudent to do, and our consultant has started. One of the factors in that formula is looking at vessel traffic for the last 5 years in the Bay, so they have already begun doing that analysis. And there's others in the Bay, VADA and Caltrans are also working on that, so we're collaboratively working on vessel traffic right now.
I may add one more thing, because we live in an earthquake country, we focus on that. It's important to know that in the United States, more bridges fall down every year from ship collisions than from earthquakes. A lot of those are barges, on river bridges, but it's the same issue. It's, the frequency of vessels, the size of the vessels, the speeds of the vessels, how wide your opening is, and then how robust is your protection. And it's a probabilistic analysis. And because of the width of our opening, we look forward to seeing our results.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to look for public comment on item 5 now.
There's no one in the room. Justine, anyone on the line?
I would like to poll the room. I believe we've had some new people join, if you don't mind.
Proceed.
Thank you so much. Good morning. If you'd like to speak this morning on this item on B&O or under public comment, please use ** to unmute yourself and let me know. Again, if you'd like to speak this morning, please press ** on your device to come through the system and let me know. I am not hearing anybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we're going to welcome Director Abbott and Director Parr, and now go back to item number 4, which is an informational report from the board appointees to the Smart Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit Board.
Darn, I thought maybe you'd just go right by that.
Director Parr?
Thank you. Actually, Patty Garbarino was to give the report today, and I'm sure you already mentioned that she's at a trust meeting for her father who passed away a couple weeks ago and couldn't make it. So, as with all of the transportation agencies, we keep our eye on the passengers. And I noticed that Dennis's report this week has a lot about the passengers and the action across the Golden Gate Bridge. So our goal is 1 million passengers. And we're 67% there as of January, and that's I know, it's wonderful. We love the people that are there. The pathways are up 29%, and every time I give a report, I say that just shocks me. I didn't realize that there was that much action on the bike and pedestrian pathways. And we're also looking for 2 million passenger miles. We've started looking to 22 million. Well, it's a good thing you're here. Both sets of notes say 20. Patty's say 20 and mine said 20. Okay. Anyway, we've got a lot of passenger miles. 22 million, David says. The exciting things that are happening are that, the Giants pretty much have their way with the transportation in the area. Is that true, Dennis? That when the Giants are playing, everyone kind of rallies around and makes their schedules work a little bit better.
Our ferry boats do a robust business when the Giants are playing.
Right. And so during the Giant season, the Larkspur Connect, which is our little orange bus that takes people from the Larkspur station down into the ferry terminal, will also work on the weekends. And it also goes to the Village and the Town Center malls in Corte Madera. And it, too, has had a robust ridership. And we're really excited about that. If you ever have an opportunity, go over and look at it. It's just a sweet little bus that shows up and people are thrilled with it to go the half a mile down to the ferry. The second thing that's happening during Giant season is that Sonoma Transit is adding a Route 20 on Highway 12 so that people can get to the area and get on our ferries and go to the Giants. Where our other big news is that on June 13th, the Windsor extension opens, and that's a big deal. There's an upside and a downside when we open because we're required to do all kinds of testing before the station actually opens. And so from May 25th to June 13th, which is a long time, there are going to be 13 horns, bells, and whistles that blow in that area. So if you have friends and neighbors that know someone that live in that corridor by Windsor, please tell them that all will be well after June 13th. And here's the other thing I thought was funny, and this is probably David's, but we couldn't do all of the bells and whistles and get it ready ahead of time because we had to avoid April 19th, which is
Butter and Eggs Day, Brett.
Butter and Eggs Day.
Wow.
So we're
Any eggs though?
There's going to be butter and chickens, I think, this time. But I think all of those stories show how both the bridge and SMART and the counties try really, really hard to be user-friendly. We want people to be on that transportation. We want it to be as seamless as we can. All right. We also approved an advertising contract. I wasn't here last month, but I heard that y'all approved an advertising contract, and I think ours is with the same company as yours. The Portosuelo design permit was approved. It's a non-motor pathway. And everyone always asks me afterwards, what about the election? So I made a little note here, and it's not going to make you happy. But basically, 2026, of course, is the smart tax, where our tax is over by then. And what has to happen is that the Board of Supervisors of both Sonoma and Marin need to call for an election. And so we're gearing up for that. And the next question is, well, will it be a voter initiated election, which means it only has to have 50%, or are the organizations going to put it on the ballot? And the answer to that is we don't control that at SMART. If a voter initiative comes, then we clap and deal with it, but we don't make that decision. Is that correct, David? That concludes my report. Thank you for waiting for me.
Thank you, Director.
The traffic was horrible. I hope it peters out by the time it pays the money and goes across the bridge, though. We need to move the bridge to San Rafael.
Just a toll plaza.
Yeah, just a toll plaza. There
There
was way too much traffic, wasn't there? It was like the old days.
Director Abbott, do you want to add anything?
No, I think Barbara did a great job, and obviously we haven't decided, we the group that is out there for the whether it's going to be a June or November of 26, but it does expire in 29, so that gives us a little cushion. But the numbers for SMART, even the million riders, the 22 million passenger, the opening of Windsor, getting Cloverdale on the transportation plan, everything is lined up very well. And so we just hope that there's no opposition going forward and working on that. And appreciate all the help that we can get.
Absolutely.
It'll be great to just be past that and move on.
And there isn't a lot of talk about it, but we do know that there are lots of people out there helping.
Thank you both. Are there any questions or comments from Director Hitt? Director Matz?
Yeah, the Windsor station, what kind of parking, if any, is being planned for it? You know?
You always ask the most interesting questions.
Let's see what Google Earth says.
How about if I say some and we hope plenty?
Okay.
I can check. David's going to check on.
Okay.
What's your next question?
No, it's over to Bert now.
Director Hill?
We do plan for lots of parking. And there's also I just happen to know that I believe there is a bike rental station there. Plus, we try to get the shuttles to go there when they need to.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's never enough.
Speaking of bicycles,
Yes.
I kind of wonder why you can't extend that across the Richmond Bridge. The train across the Richmond Bridge. That way, bicycles can get on it and go that way, and we'll have it carry to a new end. So extending right now to the other end just for fun.
You know what? I think we'll leave that to the next generation. Let your grandchildren do that.
I had to wait to the end.
You know, with the new administration, I think Dennis will allude to this too, is that we're just hoping we have enough money to finish what we've said we're going to finish. We all rely on grants. We all rely on federal money. And if any of those slashes hold, I think we'll be looking at different plans. But that's probably a good idea.
Other director comments or questions? Right, seeing none, there's no action associated with number 4. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item or address the committee under item number 6, which is public comment?
There's no one in the room. Justine, is there anyone on the line?
We have no public comment on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, we've reached the end of the agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn this committee meeting?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Hearing no objections, that concludes the meeting of the Building and Operating Committee. Thank you, colleagues. Time is now 9:39.